Hi, guys. Welcome to the Simple Doesn't Mean Easy podcast. We are here weekly working at simplifying things one day at a time, one step at a time. And together we can do this, guys. I am your host, Michelle Visser, and today is episode 18 of season 5. We are still on season 5 and we still have more great content to come. It's been such a fantastic season. If you've missed any episode, I highly recommend them all. This season, we are talking about the simple steps towards improving our health. And it has been good stuff and very doable, easy stuff. And I think you're going to love this episode. I'm excited. We are actually breaking down 3 ingredients that you really should rethink if you are trying to up the game with more wholesome, healthy food in your kitchen, on your table, in your pantry, etc. But there's a lot more to this episode too. It's not just those 3 ingredients. I'm excited because the Chief Experience Officer of Azure Standard is with us today. And I had so much fun picking her brain and hearing her favorite ingredients, her thoughts on all of this stuff. If you don't know what Azure Standard is, let me tell you. Okay, first of all, the current food model in our nation, if you somehow have missed it, I'm pretty sure you all know, it has failed us like more than once over the past few years. Our food supply network is unfortunately unreliable. We all remember the empty shelves that have happened more than once during 2020 and even since, of different things that have just not been available across the country. So there is an alternative, and Azure Standard is an amazing alternative. It's a free, independent food supply chain. It works kind of like a food buying club, like BJ's or Costco, but you don't have to buy in bulk. There is 0 club membership fees, and the shipping costs are extremely reasonable. I really love Azure Standard. But if you're not interested in Azure Standard, if you for some reason don't have access to it, which that's really close to impossible these days because they are in 49 of the 50 states. But if Azure Standard isn't your game for whatever reason, this episode is absolutely still for you. Like I said, this episode is really focusing on 3 main ingredients that we need to rethink. But we also do talk about Azure Standard and how it works. It's a family-owned company, and they are getting it done, guys. They saw a system that was broken, and they created a better way. And I thoroughly love ordering from and going to my Azure pickup on a monthly basis to get so many ingredients that I know are really good things. They literally put the food on refrigerated trucks and they send them out and they drive them to where you are. They work directly with food distributors and manufacturers, and they really do everything in their power to ensure what they are selling through Azure Standard is high quality, good stuff, good ingredients, good food. And because they remove like that middle layer of the broken food system, it works. It's a really good option. If you want to know if they deliver near you or how close the nearest drop is, if you want to go to the show notes, I will leave a link. You also can go to soullyrested.com and just search S5E18 for season 5, episode 18. And everything about this episode will come right up at soullyrested.com, search S5E18. And I am, just full disclosure, I am connected with Azure Standard. Once I went to some of the drops, started ordering the food, realized how much I love what they do. I offer links to you. There's absolutely no extra cost, but Azure knows that your purchase is coming through my suggestion, and they do support my efforts in small ways as well. So whenever you use my links, I greatly appreciate it. And it makes no difference on your end for sure. So what else did I want to tell you? So Karen Slusher is joining us. She's the Chief Experience Officer, as I mentioned. And she said a few things that we skimmed over, and I wanted to make sure I explained a little bit more. She mentioned coconut sugar, and I wanted to explain to you what coconut sugar is because it's pretty fascinating, especially if you're a sugar maker like me. Coconut sugar is actually the sap from the coconut bloom or not the coconut. Is that what I want to say? Yeah, the bloom that turns into the coconut. They make a little cut on the flower of the coconut palm and they extract the liquid sap from that flower. And that sap is then heated the same as the way we make maple syrup when we heat up the sap from the tree. And the water's evaporated, and you end up with this beautiful brown granule sugar that's coconut sugar. It's a fantastic alternative to refined white processed sugar. It's delicious, so much better for you. And it's one of many sugar alternatives actually that I include on my pantry checklist. Every sugar that I purchase for different reasons, and actually every ingredient that I purchase for all different reasons, is on this 7-page pantry checklist. If you have downloaded this before, I think I created it last season. So you've probably heard me talk about this a few times. It's all new. Totally new. Okay, not totally new. A lot of things on there stayed the same, but I've added so much over the past few weeks, and I'm excited to be rolling out this brand new pantry checklist. So please, even if you've already downloaded it, go grab it. There's new offers on there. A lot of the links have coupon codes attached to it. So there's even, these great deals, and everything on there is in my pantry. Really good stuff. So if you go to soullyrested.com/pantry, you can very easily download the pantry checklist. And Karen also mentioned Celtic salt. It's actually fascinating. I did not know this about Azure Standard. So you have to listen in. The connection between Celtic salt and Azure Standard is pretty cool. But that gives me a great entryway to tell you my sponsor for this episode is Redmond Real Salt. And to tell you that Celtic salt is a great salt option, as is Himalayan salt. But I thought I would break down quickly for you the minor differences between Redmond Real Salt, Celtic sea salt, and Himalayan pink salt so that you can know as a consumer, what salt might be best for your family. Celtic sea salt compares quite similarly to Redmond salt, but the biggest difference, honestly, is its source. Celtic sea salt is coming from a source that has environmental issues that aren't involved with Redmond real salt, because Redmond mines their salt underground from an ancient seabed. There are no environmental issues that affect Celtic salt or any modern salt today. So any modern salt is going to be impacted by things like mercury or lead or even plastics or other toxic man-made chemicals that impact our oceans. But Celtic sea salt has a delicious taste, and it really is a good option for salt. Himalayan salt, the main difference, honestly, because they actually harvest their salt from an ancient seabed. The main difference with Himalayan salt is the distance that it's traveling. It's coming from Pakistan, so like 7,000 miles to get to your kitchen. And that is a whole lot different than if you're purchasing salt that is mined here in the States in Utah. And also Redmond has just so many amazing practices and policies that are good for the environment, good for their employees and the families that work for them. So that's just a very quick synopsis. There's lots more, but a breakdown of how those different good for you salts all compare. If you'd like to check out Redmond, go to soullyrested.com/salt. And I put my 3 absolute favorite things that I am always putting in my cart when I am purchasing from Redmond. So you can see what my 3 favorite things are. And I also have my discount code there, so you can save 15% on anything you want to try out from Redmond Real Salt. Fabulous company, fabulous seasonings and salts. Can't recommend them enough. soullyrested.com/salt. And now let's bring on Karen. Okay, so Karen, I'm so glad you could join us today. I've actually been looking forward to our chat for a few weeks now since we booked it, because I'm really eager to hear what you have to say today. Karen Slusher is the Chief Experience Officer for Azure Standard. And can you give us, I know I could never do this because you guys encompass so much, but can you give us just a brief description of what Azure Standard is?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to do that. It's really funny because people ask that question, and I like to say that, well, we're in Oregon, and in Oregon we like to do things differently. They say, Portland's weird. Well, we're not in Portland, thank goodness. We're, not. I love Portland, but we are 80 miles east of Portland, and we're in the middle of wheat country and cherry orchards here in the Pacific Northwest. But Azure does a lot of things. We're not just one particular type of model or company. So it makes us just very different. We started as an organic farm back in the 70s. We were the first certified organic farm in the state of Oregon. And then, so pioneered that space, really, David and his family. Mm-hmm. Then over time, we turned into along with being an organic farm, which we still are, we developed the business into a distributorship. And so we are what you would consider a grocery distributor. We distribute to stores, grocery stores like we all go to and purchase from, as
Didn't
well
know
as,
that.
yeah.
So that's just there locally.
We are all over the country doing that. Yeah.
Wow.
And so that's where our roots are. That's where we started. David was hawking yellowneck squash off the back and wheat harvest and different things off the back of his truck as a teenager, to the stores, and the stores requesting additional products is what kind of developed the distribution side of the company.
Okay.
And so that's where it started. And we're still a grocery distributor. And then over time, people like you and I who wanted to buy kind of in bulk from the farm came to David and said, can we purchase from you direct? So he said, why not? And these food buying clubs developed. And so these food buying clubs are groups of people like you and I who come together and buy direct from the distributor. So we're cutting out the middleman. We're not going to the store, whom we still deliver to stores. And then you're cutting that store markup out because you're buying direct from the distributor, or manufacturer, because we are considered a manufacturer as well. We manufacture, of course, we have the farm and produce, and we grow our own veggies and cherries. Right now we're in the heart of cherry season. Mm-hmm. And then we also manufacture carob candies, as well as a lot of our own private label that either we're doing ourselves here, or we're contracting with suppliers or manufacturers to make our private label products for us. And that is a benefit because we can keep our prices low, kind of control the supply chain better than when you're distributing for a specific vendor, like an Annie's or Pacific Foods or Celtic Sea Salt, which are some of the vendors that we have. And we incubate and launch new brands, and a lot of folks don't realize we do that too. So it's really hard to go to market when you are a new brand. And so we work with independent and family-owned businesses, which is what we are. And we help them incubate and launch. So back in the early days, Celtic Sea Salt and Pacific Foods are two examples of companies that we helped incubate and launch and grow. And now they're really big names in the market. And so it's fun to watch those things happen too. So we're a little bit of everything. Yeah.
I did not know your connection to Celtic. That is so interesting. So, okay. When you agreed that you would be able to sit down and chat with us today, the first thing I knew I wanted to talk about was some very simple ingredients. Like, I'd like to just really narrow down a couple ingredients that I think the average person might not really think much about. Like, they might want to start getting on a healthy journey, eating a little better, having a little more whole foods in their house. But certain things they just, at least for me, that I just didn't think about in the beginning of this journey. Especially the first thing that comes to mind, honestly, is sugar. Now, part of that's because I'm a sugar maker and I have written a book all about maple syrup. But also, this is what really intrigues me about sugar. When it comes to maple syrup, and this can be a topic of a whole nother podcast, but people are often asking me, do I need to buy organic? And there's a long answer, but the short answer is actually no, because maple syrup is literally sap that is boiled down to make your syrup. And organic versus non-organic, the differences are not affecting the quality of your syrup. Our syrup is not labeled organic, but it couldn't be any more pure, if that makes sense. So the reason I tell you this is I never thought about the sugar I was buying. Like, I mainly use maple syrup and maple sugar, but I certainly use regular sugar as well, the white stuff, And until a few years ago, I was just buying the really cheap 99-cent bag at my grocery store and never, ever once thought about it. But I started learning about what it means to be organic when it's cane sugar. And like my mouth started dropping, and I was like horrified that I was feeding my family this stuff that was the 99-cent bag that was far from organic. So if you could start with that ingredient, there's a couple more I want to get into too. But
Sure.
if someone, wants to think about the sugar that they're buying, why is it important to think about, is it organic?
Well, I think sugar is a good place to start for sure. We all use it and pretty heavily in our diets
Too
and human
heavily in our
diets
society.
especially,
Yeah.
right? And so I would venture to say cane sugar is something I would avoid as much as possible and use very limitedly to start with. But if
Good
you are,
point.
sugar is sugar, right? Whether it's conventional or organic, it's still sugar.
Even
And
maple syrup, I will
yeah.
always admit, you really don't need to have a whole lot of it. Yep.
Right, right. So, and different sugars are better for you than others, right? Some spike your blood glucose up more than others, and you get those spikes and those drops. So, like a coconut sugar would be one that you could feel a lot better about having, more regularly in your diet, which is kind of where I lean. But when we look at cane sugar, one of the things that is just really a huge difference between organic and conventional is that it is highly, highly treated with desiccants and like glyphosate to dry it out. And it is just a very highly treated crop with chemicals,
Yeah.
with pesticides, synthetic chemicals. And so herbicides, pesticides, insecticides, all of those are just really, really, as you can imagine, bad for our health. And we're putting that synthetic chemical into our bodies. And then, of course, it's very refined. It's very processed.
Yeah.
And so you're putting a highly processed, highly chemically treated crop into your body, and our bodies are not designed for that. So that's probably the primary reasons I would suggest is absolutely not. If you're going to have cane sugar, go with organic, because you're not going to have any of the synthetic chemical treatments on it. It's generally not, it's not highly processed. It's going to have a little bit of a different color. It's going to look a little different than your standard sugar that
It's
you're
much
buying in the
prettier,
grocery
actually.
store. Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It has a much prettier look to it, and it can vary. I mean, it can be anywhere from a lighter, almost a white color, to a golden color. You can even kind of get almost a little brown look to it sometimes, depending on where it's coming from in the world and their process. But it's not it's not refined. It doesn't go through all the chemical treatment and the bleaching and all the things that they do to the conventional cane sugar. So that would be my assessment on why you would want to go with organic over conventional. And there's lots of other reasons, and we could spend a huge amount of time going over.
Of course. Isn't there
know.
something specific about cane sugar that the pesticides are like impossible to not use almost? Or there's something I don't know what I read a while ago, or it's really hard. I don't know.
I'm not that deeply schooled in the nuances of all the parts of cane sugar growing, but
Yeah.
there are different practices, of course, and once you are treating with pesticides and herbicides and insecticides, I like to call them all the sides. Once you're treating with those
The
things,
sides you don't want.
the sides, yes, that's right. The sides you don't want. That's a good way to put it. It gets into the plant. It uptakes into the plant itself, into its DNA. So you can't wash it off.
Yeah.
It is ingrained in the DNA of the plant.
Yeah. And maybe that's what I was reading about, the DNA. That's probably what it was. Okay, so what about oil is the next thing that I really
Okay.
didn't think about for the longest time, because I was so confused about all the options of oils and I couldn't figure out what was good, what was bad. But eventually, after a lot of reading about it, I came and trying all different ones that were considered the healthier versions. I came to the point that I fell in love with avocado oil. So I was hoping that is something that we could talk about for a minute. For me, the reasons I love avocado oil primarily is it has all the health benefits, very equivalent to olive oil, but it has a much higher smoke point. So
It
you
does,
can
yeah.
use it in the high temperature cooking. I thought I wouldn't like the taste. I thought it would actually taste avocado-ish. I personally, I don't know. Do you use avocado oil? I don't think it tastes at all avocado-ish.
Yeah, I do. I use avocado oil a lot.
Okay.
That and grapeseed oil, which is also a
Okay.
nice high smoke point, as
Okay.
well. But
Good to
avocado
know.
oil is definitely a good one to start with. And you're right, it doesn't have that avocado taste to it. So it doesn't infuse your food with some funky taste that you don't want to have there. Um,
Right.
Whereas
Now,
olive oil will, if you've ever done anything with olive
yes.
oil, it will give that kind of heavy olive oil flavor
Yes.
to whatever
But
you're
the
cooking.
avocado is such a light flavor that I'll even use it just right to sprinkle it on my popcorn. If I have some air pot popcorn, I'll drizzle
Yeah.
some avocado oil and add my salt and I'm good. Um, so I didn't realize when I first started using avocado oil, I was picking it up at my local TJ Maxx, or maybe some grocery stores carried it, some didn't. But I didn't realize that all avocado oil is definitely not the same. And I came across an article explaining, and tell me if I'm wrong, but this article was explaining that there are no standards to determine if avocado oil is of any certain quality. And there's actually no regulations over the labels per se for avocado oil. So it's really important to know your source, if I'm understanding it correctly.
Yeah, it is important to know your source. And that's one of the things here at Azure that is so important to us. We either know the farmers ourselves, we know the groves they come from, or the supplier that we work with, maybe if we have a broker or something like that that we're working with, we know we have the information from them and they know the supplier really, really well. Now we've had very
Okay.
long-term relationships with a lot of our suppliers, 30 plus years. So we know them, we know their
Wow.
processes. And so it's important to know your source, or at least know that where you're buying it from has a relationship with their source and can tell you what the standard is, for what they're sourcing from their supplier. For us, we like cold pressed olive, I say olive oil almost, because it's
Yep.
the normal one you go to, but
Yep.
avocado oil. We like cold pressed olive oil too, but we like cold pressed avocado oil. You maintain a higher nutrient profile when you're doing cold pressed as opposed to refining. Some folks
Okay.
want the refined because they can still maybe have they feel like they have a little bit of the taste still of the olive. And depending on what part of I'm sorry, I keep saying olive, the avocado is being pressed. Sometimes a little bit of the pit gets pressed with it, or the skin is pressed. And if it's a little more mature or a little less mature, you're going to get a little bit of a different flavor profile. And that goes on both sides, even with olives. So, for avocados, it just depends on, when they're harvesting it and the age of that avocado and what is being pressed, to show whether even the colorations can have a variation in color, based on what part of the avocado is being pressed and what
Hmm.
color the skin was at the time that was being pressed. So there, you can see variance. And sometimes even our avocado oil will look a little bit different. One time it might be a little bit of a lighter green, another time it might be
I have noticed
a
that.
little
Yep.
more brown. Yeah, just depending again on what time of the harvest it's being pulled and pressed.
Okay. And is it true that avocados are really resistant to oxidation? Like they don't go rancid as quickly as some other oils?
Yes, that's true, and it depends on different factors. It also depends on how you're storing it in your home. If you're putting it in an area where it's being uh, heat, where it's coming in contact with a lot of heat,
Hmm. So
then
right there
you
by the
want to
stove might not be the best place.
right. I probably would keep it in a cool, dark place. I wouldn't keep it
Yep.
in my cabinet by my stove, or where
Right.
it's going to come in contact with some type of heat source.
Right.
So, and that's really with any oils, just
Yeah.
making sure that we're not keeping them around heat. It will speed up the oxidation and rancidity of that oil.
Okay. I guess though, I have just a small little dispenser that I do keep by the stove so that nobody panics. I go through that pretty quickly, so I don't have
Sure.
any problem with leaving that there. Yeah.
And
But
I
when
do
I
the same
get,
thing. I have a little bottle that I drizzle with. I like to put it on my
yeah.
salad. So,
Yep.
um,
Yep.
keep it,
Definitely.
or, as a finishing oil on different foods. So, it it's fine there as long as it's just not, being stored over long term.
Yes. Yes. Because I sometimes get the biggest bottle you guys have, and then I will keep that in the dark corners of the cold area of my kitchen.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and
yeah.
it's so important. I mean, like we talked about knowing your source, because there are so many diluted oils on the market, and
Yes.
companies that cut costs, and so they'll use other oils, and call it olive oil or
Right.
avocado oil. And so, we do a lot of screening here at Azure. And so every product that comes into the company, regardless of what it is, we
Mhm.
have a product meeting every month, and we sit and go through all of the new products. And then if we need to reassess products, we'll do that as well. We do taste tests. And so we just pour avocado or olive oil, whatever the oil is, onto a spoon. And we know what the polyphenols in olive oil are supposed to taste like. And we can
Mm.
tell, what that's supposed to be like on your palate if it's pure. And so we're doing taste testing here as a group, and we're going through the process to determine, it doesn't taste like it's supposed to. Is it what we would want to put in front of our customers? But we also require certificates of analysis on all of our products that come through. So we're looking at what the makeup of the product is through the certificate of analysis. And so we're able to determine if it's pure, if it's not, looking at those documents.
Okay. And I know that's one thing I fell in love with when I started ordering from Azure Standard, that I realized you guys have these high standards. And I realized also that you're very picky about what you offer. You do not offer refined chemical laden cane sugar. You can't buy it at Azure Standard. So that makes me feel good to know I'm not going to mess up with something I order, even if I haven't done all the research to know if it's definitely a healthy choice. So I greatly
Absolutely.
appreciate that.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't want to offer anything to our customers that we wouldn't want to put into our own bodies. Now, we won't say everything we sell is something that we would all eat ourselves.
Good
There's
point.
its own foods, right? And so we
Right.
know that everyone who comes here to Azure may not be ready for an entirely organic lifestyle.
Good
And
point.
so we have, foods that we consider like entry level products that are a higher step up than what you're going to get in the grocery store. But we know that we can then help teach our customers how to pick the right things over time, and do education to help them along their journey toward organic. And when it comes to even the foods, that if you're not just buying straight cane sugar, organic cane sugar from us, every product that comes through, when we're looking at them in those monthly meetings I was telling you about, we are looking at the ingredients, and if it just says cane sugar, it won't come in through our distributorship. So we'll reject that product every time if it's not organic cane
Okay.
sugar, if it's being used in a product. And we try again to limit that, when we're looking at those products that are coming in that are maybe a box of cookies or something like that, that we're limiting the amount of cane sugar products even that we're bringing through our distributorship, and that we're looking for other options like maybe monk fruit or um,
I love monk fruit.
yeah, monk fruit's amazing.
It
And
is.
allulose, or something that's different, that maybe also will be a little healthier for you. Coconut sugar, as I mentioned before. We look at those products to make sure that we're giving a vast array of options, and not everything is just filled with organic cane sugar. Because
Right,
again,
right.
sugar, right? And we all
Absolutely.
it in moderation.
Yep, yep. Okay, well, let's talk about something else that maybe we should have in moderation, but I personally don't really ever want to have it in moderation. Let's talk about chocolate because it is a favorite
Okay.
topic of mine. Um, I make a lot of chocolate chip cookies. I put chocolate chips in a whole lot of things. And, if you go and you just Google, like, are Nestle chocolate chip cookie or Nestle chocolate chips good for you? Or are they healthy? Or are chocolate chips healthy? I guarantee you the first thing that comes up, you're going to get some ridiculousness about how, well, because chocolate chips are made from cocoa, and
Right.
cocoa is full of antioxidants, that chocolate chips are healthy for you. Like, you really will get that. Go ahead and try it.
Right,
So
exactly, you
so
will.
let's get rid of that right now. Let's explain that. If you could break it down for us, because you do not sell Nestle chocolate chips, of course. Um,
We do not.
you you sell a lot of options that I love, and I'm still working through them, honestly, but I would love for you to explain more about, like, I know you have the cacao nibs, I think they are cacao nibs, right?
Cacao nibs, we do,
I
yes.
have a big 5 get a 5 pound canister, like an air seal canister filled with my cacao nibs that I'm working through different ways I love using them. They're so delicious. And you have carob chips and you have organic chocolate chips if somebody just wants, something like Nestle's, but much, much better.
Right.
So why do we want to go organic with our chocolate? And what are all these options that we have?
Oh my, that's a big question. I grew up on the East Coast near Hershey, Pennsylvania. And
Oh, I know
yes,
Hershey. Yes.
yes. And they, that was a huge push, even in schools to get kids to eat Hershey chocolate,
Oh,
right?
funny.
And then when you taste good chocolate, you realize that Hershey and Nestle and all those chocolates really are not good chocolate.
They're almost a
They
little
just
bit like almost, I don't want to say plastic, but just even a different texture, It's not, you're right. It's not good.
Well, plastic is a good assessment. I mean, really, a lot of chocolates, conventional chocolates use wax, and it's almost
Oh.
offensive. You're like, really? You're putting wax? You're like, I'm eating
Huh.
wax. So they use wax. They also use things like high fructose corn syrups and
Mm,
cheap ingredients.
yeah.
Um, and although you do have some really expensive like Belgian chocolates that are not organic out there, you're still working with a cocoa bean or cacao, where again, a highly treated crop, right? And
Mm,
so you can't wash pesticides off, no matter how much people try to tell you that you can.
mm,
And so you're still going to get that residual in your body from that processed cacao bean or the cocoa. So, you know, that's one main reason to go organic, just to get rid of the synthetic chemicals, right?
yeah.
That's the first
And the wax. Didn't know about
and the
that.
wax, yeah, just really I just don't
Ah,
like eat wax. Like would you just go eat a candle? I would venture
no,
to say,
I don't think so. Even the
right?
ones that smell
So
good.
who would want to do that? So it's just kind of like, really? Wax? You care so much about the people you're feeding your food to that you're going to put wax
Yeah.
in. So, but really, I
And then
think
they
it
must put
comes
a
down
lot of
to,
flavorings in there to cover up that wax taste,
oh
the
yeah, yeah, it's filled
artificial
with all
flavorings.
kinds of things,
Ugh.
dyes and you know,
Yeah.
color dyes and things like that. So, I say read your labels.
Yeah.
That's so important. Read the ingredients. Read
Yeah.
what's in the food. And when it comes to cacao or cocoa or carob, sometimes it comes down to preference. They all have benefits in different ways. They all have antioxidants, like you mentioned. Of course, that gets touted. Cacao has more antioxidants than cocoa would. Whereas when you're looking at carob, you're looking at a different profile as far as like it's loaded with calcium and potassium and fiber. There's no caffeine in carob. Whereas when you're looking at cacao or cocoa, you've got caffeine. So sometimes it just comes down to personal preference for your own body, what you're looking to, the type of vitamins and minerals and things that you're looking to put in your body. It's a great sweet treat. Any of them are a great sweet treat. For
There.
me personally, I choose carob. I have autoimmune disorder. And so when you have any kind of autoimmune disorder, chocolates are just really inflammatory. And so
Oh,
it just adds to
yeah.
inflammation in your body. A lot of folks also don't know that chocolate inhibits the absorption of calcium. And for me, as a 48-year-old
Hmm.
woman, I need calcium
Yes.
in my bones.
Yes.
And carob actually aids in the absorption of calcium. So I
Interesting.
tend
You
to,
just helped me with something because I would have forgotten this, honestly. Every episode this whole season is about simple steps towards improving your health. And I promised my listeners in the beginning that whenever possible, I would bring in weight loss and menopause because those are two topics that came in second and third when everybody was saying what they wanted the season to be about. So you just brought in menopause beautifully, how a menopausal woman really should consider carob chips. And
yes,
those are important
absolutely.
things.
That is very important. And not just, I can tie it to the weight loss as well for you. Whereas
Awesome.
carob is actually helps with satiety. So it is often used when you
Wow.
are, yes, it helps you stay
So
full longer.
I'll eat less cookies, you're telling me?
Yeah,
Maybe.
I can't promise you that. But I will tell you that I keep carob in my drawer here in the office, and just a small handful of carob tides
Hmm.
me over for the afternoon. And so you don't have to eat lots of it. You know, sometimes with chocolate, I could eat a whole bar and then you feel bad. So I'm like, I ate the whole bar.
Yes.
With carob,
Yes.
one square, keeps of carob just keeps me satiated through the day, and I feel less hungry. I don't snack as much. And so carob is very good for aiding in digestion. So it helps actually with your gut health. And that's really important again with just keeping your gut
I
healthy
love it.
and clear.
Now,
So
what is carob exactly? Because it is not cacao or cocoa.
it is not. Carob is a legume. It comes
Huh.
from a tree, like it looks like a bean pod, and primarily grown in the Mediterranean and the Middle East. Our carob we sourced from Australia, from an organic carob farmer there. It is often used for the bean inside for guar gum, which is a thickener. And so the carob that comes out of the Mediterranean and the Middle East is often used primarily for that. They extract the bean out to make that guar gum.
Hmm.
And the pod is really skinny and is a kind of a byproduct, and it gets ground up into powder and turned into carob treats and things like that. Now, that type of cultivar of carob pod out of that part of the world, the Mediterranean, the Middle East, is very bitter. It just is has a kind of a bitter aftertaste to it, and it has kind of a grittiness. So a lot of the conventional carob out there, especially, and really, there's very little organic carob in the market. We make
Hmm.
pretty much the only organic, truly pure organic carob in the marketplace right now. There is another one in
Wow.
the United States we are aware of, but they add uh, cocoa butter
Oh,
into theirs, so it's not a pure carob.
okay.
Um, so it's a legume again, and it comes from the locust tree. It is high in manganese and fiber, as I mentioned before. And the cultivar that we are uh, pulling in from Australia is grown just for the sweet lush pod. So it's a different cultivar, which gives the different flavor profile to the carob powder that we use. It's
Oh,
very
wow.
sweet, naturally sweet, so you don't have to add sugar to it.
Yeah.
Um,
I love your carob chips. They're delicious, and I will eat them the way you eat your little square of carob. Yeah.
oh yeah, just buy a little handful and
Yeah.
absolutely delicious. I like the chips too. The mint is my favorite.
Oh,
Uh,
I haven't
Reminds me
tried
of an
that
Andes
one.
candy, but without the colorations
Oh,
and the.
I didn't even know you had mint carob chips. That is going in my next Azure order.
Yes,
Oh my
me too.
gosh.
You'll have to tell me what you think of it. It's one of my
The
absolute
weight loss idea is going to go out the window though, because those are going to be way too delicious.
They are definitely can be I hate to say an addiction, but they definitely can be.
I
They
love
are a
it.
bit of a favorite in our house.
Wow. Okay, so what about now that we've covered those three ingredients I wanted to make sure we covered, what kind of tips would you give somebody who is just kind of starting out and they just really want to eat a little healthier, but it's got to be baby steps. We can't overhaul the whole kitchen or you go crazy, you know.
Yeah,
Where would you
absolutely.
tell them to start? What are your tips for that?
Absolutely, like to help with that. It's so funny. You have different people who are all in and all out type people, and you have the people that have to take the baby steps. And
Yeah.
and generally that's who most of us are, right? We're not just going to go
Yeah.
in and wipe out everything that we've purchased and then start again. It's expensive to do that too.
Yeah.
Where I would start is with produce. If you're starting your journey, produce would be the first thing that I would change out. And the
Okay.
reason for that is there's a saying out there that many people have heard, the clean 15 and the dirty dozen.
Yes.
And I tell folks that is really a lie. Yes,
Really?
yes, because you cannot wash pesticides off of produce. It's not possible. So when glyphosate is sprayed on the ground, or insecticides or herbicides or any of those things are sprayed in the ground, the plant is uptaking that into the DNA of that plant. And as that plant blooms, that pesticide residue is still in there. So it's ingrained within the DNA of the plant. So I guess it comes down to, when you look at the clean 15 and the dirty dozen and the way that it's shared, as far as the results of pesticide residue on those. And so they say, the level of pesticide residue is what determines, which ones are the clean 15 and which ones are the dirty dozen. Well, the clean 15 still have pesticide residue. So the question is, do you want a lot of pesticide in your diet, or do you want a little bit of pesticide in your diet? So if I were starting and making my first change, it would be produce, whether it's frozen, whether it's canned, whether it's fresh. I would be moving to organic.
For everything. You would ignore the whole dirty dozen idea.
I would. I throw that out the window. It's just, it's not accurate. You're still eating pesticide. I always we had an article that we put out, I think it was our January, I'd have to look, sales flyer, where we talked about that and shared. And it's kind of like, if I put a little poo in my brownies and I mixed it up, would you still want to eat my brownies? Well, probably not, right?
No.
So if there's a little pesticide in your produce, do you want a little pesticide in your diet, or do you want no pesticide in your diet? The goal is to get that out of our diets.
Wow.
It is dangerous in our bodies. Over time, pesticide builds up. The more we eat, the more it builds up in our body. And then we get all these different health effects from it, right? And so we want to clean our bodies of that. So that would be the first place. The second place I would go is looking at about 4 crops that I would start swapping out right away, because they're the most highly treated crops. Cocoa beans, coffee beans, soybeans, rice, and of course cane sugar, like we talked about before.
Wow. So I picked 2 good ones to talk about. Okay.
You did. So those are 5 of the most highly treated crops when it comes to chemicals, synthetic chemicals and treatment with herbicides and pesticides and insecticides. So I would be swapping that out. Rice being one of the main ones, I would get that one out right away. And then and of course, this is produce, but corn in the United States, we're not aware of any corn that is not genetically modified. So organic is where you want to go.
Wow. Okay. So all of this stuff you're talking about, including produce, which some people might not know, we can order through Azure Standard if we don't have a local great source for that. Local's always best, but if we don't, and we live in the boondocks and we want something delivered to us, we can order through Azure Standard. So could you explain to us in a nutshell, how does it work? How do we order from Azure Standard and get the good stuff?
Absolutely. Well, you have a couple options. The best way to order through us is to a drop point. We call those drop pickup locations in your community. We are in 49 of the 50 states.
Wow.
There's likely a drop near you somewhere. So getting onto our website, going to our Find a Drop map, which we have on our website, in the footer of our website.
And I'll link that in the show notes.
Yeah, and then you can put in your zip code, and then it will open up that map and show you if there are any drop points in your area. Now, they're pickup locations. Some will hold orders, some will not. Some you have to be there to pick up at the time of delivery. I always tell folks, if there's multiple drop pickup locations in your area, join all of them, and then find out which one is a good fit for you, because it's all about community. We're trying to build community. Maybe one vibes with you a little bit better than another one.
I agree.
A little bit more connection there. Talk to the drop coordinators. They're volunteers. They host these drops in their community. Azure doesn't come into a community and say, we're going to start delivering here. We get invited. We get invited by a customer who wants to be a service to their community with these food buying clubs. And so get to know that drop coordinator, find out how their drop works. You can start one yourself if you don't have a drop in your community. And of course, you can't order through the mail, although some things are limited through the mail. Some produce doesn't ship well. We don't do any frozen through the mail. So,
and there's no club fees at all.
It's
just a shipping, and it's a very reasonable shipping fee. So I love ordering through Azure Standard.
Well,
Karen, this has been
with us.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for enlightening me, especially on the chocolate and the carob. I need to go order some right now.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for episode 18, but I hope that gave you some insight into those 3 main ingredients. And then we threw in a bunch of other stuff too. Yes. And by the way, we just skimmed over the chocolate options. All of the things we mentioned, including all of those wonderful options for chocolate, organic, nutritious chocolate, are on my pantry checklist. So don't forget to grab that at solelyrested.com/ pantry, totally free. You can download it instantly, and it links to all the products we mentioned, plus all the products that I am always referring to over on Instagram and other places you might be following me. So it's a great thing to have on hand, soulyrested.com/pantry. And of course, as I mentioned in the beginning, you can always search soulyrested.com. In the search bar, put S5E18 for this episode, and all the information, the links, all the relevant stuff. It's like show notes on steroids will pop up for you there. You also can watch this episode in video form or listen in audio, all linked right there if you search S5E18 at soulyrested.com. And don't forget that we are still doing that fun giveaway. Every author that has been highlighted here in this season has donated a copy of their book for this fun giveaway. So one winner who leaves a review over on Apple Podcast for the Simple Doesn't Mean Easy podcast is going to instantly be entered to win a copy of every single book from every single author. Talk about a great addition to your library to help you with simple steps towards improving your health. So please take a second to go over and leave a review at Apple Podcasts. If you're not sure how to do that, super simple. I break it down for you and provide the links you need. If you go to soulyrested.com/podcast, soulyrested.com/podcast, and it makes it really easy for you to go over and leave a review for this show. It means a lot to me. I read everyone, and everyone makes me super happy. So thank you. And that is it for today. I'm glad you joined me. I hope you join me back here every Monday morning. A new episode is dropping. And remember, it is easy to forget how blessed we are to live this life. So enjoy the simple, everyday efforts today. I know it's not always easy, but it's a good life.